In 2026, 10 U.S. states may enact sweeping measures to deport or remove undocumented immigrants residing within their borders. These states might sharply increase cooperation with federal immigration agencies, expand use of immigration detention contracts, and invest in technology to detect undocumented workers. Local law enforcement could be required to notify federal authorities when individuals are arrested, even for minor offenses, effectively eroding sanctuary protections. Employers may face heavy fines or criminal liability for hiring undocumented labor, while public benefits, such as health, education, or welfare, could be restricted to citizens and legal residents. States may also demand that landlords check immigration status before leasing property. Legal challenges will likely rise as civil rights groups push back on due process concerns, Fourth Amendment issues, and equal protection claims. Some states might mimic legislation already proposed at the federal level, increasing minimum penalties for illegal entry or re-entry, and limiting bond eligibility for undocumented migrants. Whether these harsh policies succeed will depend on funding, political will, court rulings, and public backlash. The potential social and economic costs, labor shortages, community distrust, legal fees, could create serious tension. Ultimately, enforcement alone may not resolve underlying migration pressures. South Carolina, for years, quietly enforced federal immigration laws without making headlines, but 2025 marked a turning point. The state's undocumented population is estimated at nearly 120,000, and rising costs in healthcare, education, and public services were drawing attention. Lawmakers responded by passing laws that require every county jail to check the immigration status of anyone arrested, no matter the crime. Some legislators even proposed a $500 reward for tips that lead directly to deportations. While critics called this a bounty system, supporters claimed it encouraged community involvement in law enforcement. Public opinion supported the crackdown. Rising emergency room costs, school funding strains, and high-profile crimes involving undocumented individuals were presented as reasons why stricter enforcement was necessary. Politicians also felt pressure to align with neighbors like Georgia and Florida, which were already enacting tough measures. By 2026, South Carolina could see deportations rise 20 to 30% if the state fully funds new initiatives and expands collaboration with federal authorities. For a state that isn't the largest home to immigrants, the shift is dramatic. 2025 was the trial run, but 2026 will bring the real impact. Mississippi has long flown under the radar in national immigration debates, but not anymore. In 2025, lawmakers introduced the Mississippi Immigration Enforcement Act, a sweeping law that dramatically expanded local enforcement powers. Under this law, every county jail was expected to adopt 287G agreements, which allow local sheriffs to enforce federal immigration law directly. To ensure compliance, the law even gave the governor the power to remove any sheriff or police chief who refused to cooperate. This level of state oversight is rare and underscores just how serious Mississippi is about deportation. The state's 35,000 undocumented residents and $100 million in public service costs, covering healthcare, education, and other services, added economic pressure. Hospitals and schools were asking for relief, creating a political and social environment that made aggressive enforcement popular with voters. Looking ahead to 2026, Mississippi is likely to increase deportations by 25%. Non-compliance is no longer an option for law enforcement officers, and the state's approach signals a zero-tolerance culture that few counties can resist. Alabama is no stranger to hardline immigration laws. Its 2011 legislation was among the strictest in the nation, and in 2025, the state revived this approach with renewed force. New laws require police to verify immigration status during any stop or arrest where there is reasonable suspicion, a move critics call "show me your papers." Information collected is forwarded to federal authorities, which means even minor traffic violations can trigger deportation proceedings. The state's 85,000 undocumented residents are seen as an economic strain. Public services, including education and healthcare, cost the state over $250 million annually. Sheriffs in Jefferson and Mobile counties reported jails full of undocumented individuals, driving budgets higher. Politically, immigration became a winning issue in election campaigns, and the new laws reflect voter demands. By 2026, Alabama is projected to see deportations rise by 30%, making it one of the toughest states for undocumented immigrants. Everyday activities, driving, going to work, even dropping kids at school, could trigger law enforcement action. In 2025, Tennessee made it illegal for local officials to support sanctuary policies. This law effectively shut down any resistance from cities and counties. At the same time, a new grant program provided money to sheriffs and police departments that cooperated with 287G, giving law enforcement funding, training, and extra detention capacity. Counties like Davidson and Knox quickly negotiated deeper agreements with ICE. Emergency service costs were climbing, with estimates topping $300 million annually due to the undocumented population. Public opinion supported tougher laws, giving politicians the backing they needed. By 2026, Tennessee is expected to increase deportations by 35%. With laws backed by both punishment and funding incentives, the state is building a uniform, comprehensive enforcement system. Undocumented immigrants will face consistent pressure statewide, with no local sanctuary protections to shield them. Illinois isn't traditionally associated with deportations, but 2025 brought a sudden shift. Chicago saw 25,000 new migrant arrivals in a single year, overwhelming shelters, schools, and hospitals. The cost of emergency services and housing assistance spiked, reaching hundreds of millions of dollars. Even areas that once offered sanctuary began rethinking policies. Programs supporting undocumented residents were cut, and local leaders started pushing for mandatory e-verify and closer cooperation with ICE. Deportations could rise 20% in 2026 simply through increased compliance at the county level. The change is mostly budget-driven. Residents facing high taxes and inflation are growing impatient with the financial burden of supporting undocumented populations. Illinois is moving from a sanctuary approach to a more enforcement-focused system. Arizona experienced over 400,000 border apprehensions in 2025, putting enormous strain on local communities. Executive orders expanded state-led border operations, and local police were encouraged to work with ICE directly. Some lawmakers even proposed paying citizens for reporting undocumented individuals. Though these plans were controversial, emergency services spent roughly $150 million on undocumented residents, while schools in Tucson and Phoenix reported enrollment spikes, requiring budget adjustments. Public opinion strongly supported stricter enforcement, fueled by frustration with perceived federal inaction. By 2026, Arizona could see deportations rise 30 to 35%. Counties will adopt multiple 287G agreements, further deputizing local sheriffs. Daily life for undocumented immigrants will become increasingly risky, as enforcement is active both at the border and within communities. Georgia passed House Bill 11,005, requiring statewide cooperation with ICE. The law also mandated DNA collection from non-citizens arrested for certain crimes, aiming to fast-track deportations. With an estimated 350,000 undocumented residents, rising jail costs, and budget pressures, Georgia ensured compliance through audits and threats of funding cuts. Counties that resisted faced penalties, and sheriff offices expanded ICE transfers. By 2026, deportations in Georgia could rise 40%. Unlike border states relying solely on manpower, Georgia's strategy uses a precise legal and administrative pipeline, making enforcement systematic and unavoidable. Inland communities will feel the pressure just as much as border towns. Florida has become one of the toughest states for immigration enforcement. The state tied funding and grants to e-verify compliance, affecting contractors, schools, and hospitals. Businesses working with the state must verify employee status, while audits ensure compliance. Florida's 800,000 undocumented immigrants are spread across agriculture, construction, and service industries. Public spending on migrant services exceeds $1 billion annually, straining budgets in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Orlando. By 2026, deportations could rise 30 to 40%, amplified by workplace and service sector enforcement. The pressure is not just from police, but also from the state's financial leverage, audits, and funding penalties. Louisiana passed Act 399, making it a felony for law enforcement to ignore ICE detainers. Sheriffs, jailers, and even city police chiefs could face prison time for non-compliance. the state has roughly 150,000 undocumented residents, with public costs over $300 million for healthcare, education, and social services. Rural parishes and cities like New Orleans faced overwhelming demand for public resources. The Attorney General actively pressured sanctuary-leaning localities with lawsuits and threats of state takeover. By 2026, deportations could rise 35%, and schools, hospitals, and employers are increasingly tied into enforcement measures. Louisiana has become a model for extreme state-level immigration control. Texas leads the nation in immigration enforcement. SB 4 and SB 8 give police authority to arrest individuals suspected of unlawful entry and require all counties to adopt 287G agreements by 2026. Texas handles over 40% of all U.S. border apprehensions, spending more than $5 billion on state-led operations, including National Guard deployment and expanded detention facilities. Voter support for these measures is high, and the political climate continues to prioritize enforcement. By 2026, deportations could rise 40 to 50%, making Texas the toughest state for undocumented immigrants and the national blueprint for state-driven deportation efforts. No state is expected to be as coordinated or relentless. 2025 was just the beginning. States across the U.S. are building powerful enforcement systems, using a mix of legal mandates, financial incentives, and political pressure to remove undocumented residents. By 2026, millions of undocumented immigrants could face stricter checks, faster deportations, and harsher penalties in multiple states. For families, communities, and local economies, the effects will be profound. America's immigration landscape is changing, and the crackdown is only getting started. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share.